Hey there, this is Mike from King of Worms. King of Worms is a project I started back in 2015. It was originally just a side project that was away from my main band, Pain Patterns. It was originally intended to be like an homage or tribute to late 80s, early 90s style death metal acts such as like Morbid Angel and Carcass and Deicide. Um, it originally started with just me and the original bass player from Pain Patterns, Raimundo Romero, where we were just writing these songs together and we tried to fill out a full lineup. But over the years, we had so many lineup changes, it ended up eventually falling to a single project to where only I was the only one working in it, and that's where we wrapped up to today. The band name King of Worms actually was presented by Raimundo. It was presented in the name of a lot of the lyrical contents that we were giving towards the album being very anti-religious themes and that sort. King of Worms was a name that was kind of used as a slanderous term towards Jesus Christ being a king of nothing, a king of worms. So we ended up running with that just because it fit. It was perfectly aggressive and it was everything we wanted it to be at the time. Lord of Thorns was the initial first album that we were working on for King of Worms. Um, it was an album that I wrote in a span of 2 nights roughly. The first 4 songs of the album I actually wrote in one session and was able to rough draft those out and record them all in my home studio. The following 4 songs were written, I would probably say, almost half a year later, and in the same sort, record them all out, rough demoed them. I tried getting several musicians to work on them, but over time and again of people just falling in and out of King of Worms, it became due to the relevance of not being able to fill out the whole crew that I ended up more or less taking on the roles myself and seeing this album to the end from top to bottom, performing all the instruments I could and recording. The lyrical concepts that are presented in Lord of Thorns feature a lot of my personal issues growing up. I wanted to make a extreme album, and for an extreme album, you have to have heavy content. It can't be something light. So I put myself back mentally into some of the most troublesome things I grew up with mentally. Threnody, for example, was a lot had a lot to do with me coming to terms with that not feeling comfortable about myself and hatred I felt towards myself as a person and the world around me. And I basically drew myself to the point of attempting suicide, and that's the concept of Threnody, glorifying that point of reaching death and seeing that as a purpose. Um, the other lyrical content that came through on the album pretty prevalently is anti religious themes, such that you'll find in The Maggots That Crawl from the Wounds and Thornbearer. Those songs were mostly driven towards my lack of understanding towards religion and the world around me. It was heavily pressed on me when I was in my early teens and younger youthful days, where people made it seem like I had to understand religion and it had to work for me, or else there was something wrong with me as to why it didn't work out. I was very frustrated with these things growing up, and it made me a very aggressive and mentally unstable at times individual, and it gave me a lot of issues growing up. And that same personal struggle is what I wanted to captivate in the making of these songs and presenting that lyrical content. um, the only other main kind of lyrical content I dabbled in was my love for literature. I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft and that cosmic horror kind of atmosphere. So 2 of the songs on the album, The Great Sleeper and Ascendance of a Continual One, are my forays into that Lovecraftian metal that's very, very so loved by myself. The cover art is something that was presented to me from Thomas Carlson, who's a really good friend of mine. He has been with me in developing the image for King of Worms for, I would say, almost about 2 years now. He presented the band logo to me, and originally the concept I gave him for an album cover, I wanted to do the old school metal way, like the old Carcass covers, where it was just actual photography. I wanted to have a crown of thorns, and I wanted to place it on a throne, just cover it in blood, and just slap my logo, King of Worms, over it, and basically call it that. He took that idea of mine and went foobar crazy with it. He developed this whole dark, atmospheric, dark fantasy kind of thing that just became the album cover for Lord of Thorns. He developed the logo to match it and was able to make this almost Magic the Gathering slash Diablo 2 reference type of artwork that, in my opinion, really tied together the lyrical concepts and the imagery that I needed to complete Lord of Thorns. I feel bands need that extra helping hand when it comes to releasing their music, and that to me is the importance of having a label. It's really hard to market your music yourself, and I feel a lot of people overlook that aspect when it comes to being a musician. They think you record the music, you write the music, you get it out there, it's sold. That's very much not the case. There's a lot of media relations that go into things like that, and a lot of people that work behind the scenes, which I feel press relations and things like that, and management through bands, through media labels and record labels, they give you the available tools to help you manage it and get it out there while taking a lot of that work off the stress of the musician and basically getting that product to all the people that really deserve to hear it. I got to see a little bit of that start out when I was still working in my previous band, Judicator. I was there for the beginning of signing towards Prosthetic Records. I did not get to see it go past Let There Be Nothing, which was the last album we worked on together. But having that availability and that helping hand from Prosthetic was something that really was an eye-opener for me, to see how that can really change the way of being a self-independent band towards a band having that extra helping hand from a record label. It's a very, very beneficial thing for a lot of artists to use. The lineup changes we featured a lot in King of Worms originally just started out with me and the original bass player Raymundo Romero from Pain Patterns. It was just us two. I wrote all the music still from the beginning of things till now, but I still had that small helping hand in whatever else happened. Um, Over the time, me and RJ kind of split ways as far as making music together and that sort. So I did seek to fill out the lineup with other musicians from Arizona and good friends of mine that I really appreciated. Uh, it was hard, really hard to find the ability to take other musicians from bands I liked and incorporating them into this project. It was almost like a revolving door of musicians in and out, and it became more of a easier process for me to just take the time to perform all the instruments and record it myself. With the with a lot of the good feedback I've gotten so far with Lord of Thorns, I am really looking forward to filling out this lineup hopefully this next year. I do have a few musicians that I have in mind that will round out the lineup, some of which I've already been working with for quite some time. As to not say they weren't featured on Lord of Thorns is a lot, but there will be a full King of Worms lineup and this next year, and hopefully we'll have a really good turnaround towards the next King of Worms album as well. A recent influential album for me, I would have to say the newest Dark Fortress album that came out, Spectres from the Old World, is a big inspiration for me. I find so many things in Dark Fortress's music that have been truly inspiring, whether it's Maureen's massive lyrical scapes and the ability to weave these heavily intricate stories through his lyrical concepts, or it's Santura's amazing songwriting talents. It's unique to Dark Fortress how they can blend these obscure atmospheric elements while still remaining true to classic black metal and lighter death metal antics. I feel it's something that just has always been inspiring for me from my earliest days till now. COVID-19. COVID-19 has been a hugely negative thing on the world of metal. It's it's been negative and positive at the same time, I feel. Due to the inability for a lot of bands to interact with their fans physically, a lot of musicians have actually branched out. I've seen started using different platforms such as like Twitch streaming and things like that. I find extremely interesting how bands have been able to survive or continue to keep themselves relevant by streaming their performances or practices. It's really inspiring to see how some musicians have worked around the inconvenience and still managed to make a positive outcome out of it. The most negative thing I see coming out of it, though, is a lot of music venues are having trouble staying open due to the inability to practice safe social distancing during a time like this. Um, I have seen quite a few venues here in Arizona that have shut down due to the ability to keep their inability to keep their doors open. I would say that's probably the thing I'm the most scared about coming out of COVID-19 is having those places for all these touring bands to come back and interact with their fans. Hopefully, we don't lose any more venues at all during this crisis. I would hate to see one of my own favorite venues here in Arizona, Club Red in Mesa, Phoenix. I'd hate to see that place shut its doors. Every time I've been there, whether it's performing or not, has always been phenomenal. Plans for the upcoming year. I will be hopefully getting a full lineup out of King of Worms after Lord of Thorns is released and settles a bit. I will have a full lineup announced and ready to go. I have already started working on more material for a follow up album to Lord of Thorns. As for that, that's more so the only reasonable future I can look at. I don't know when touring is going to be a respective thing again. I don't know when we'll able to get around the whole social distancing thing, but with the ability to record things on my own and some of the musicians I'm working with have their own home studios of their own, it seems like this is going to be something that King of Worms is mostly going to specialize in is the fact that we can work through distance. And I would hope to say before the end of 2021 I'll be able to release a follow-up for Lord of Thorns. Other than that, I still have my main band Pain Patterns, who's well on their way of working through their second album. We've got about, I want to say, 6 songs already written and recorded, and we have probably about 3 more to go. And I am working on a symphonic metal album. We'll see how far that goes. I can't add too many details to that in the time being. But on that note, thank you guys for taking the time to hear things about King Ov Wyrms, and I look forward to getting my music out to you guys in the near future.